what's going on, guys? Octane Restorations here. Today we're back with the Yamaha RD60 and we're going to be sanding and prepping the tank. So that's on the agenda today. Going to go ahead and get that down to bare metal, get it primed and get it ready to lay some paint down on it.
So this is the motorcycle tank before. As you can see, it was in pretty rough shape, really sun faded. This is what we're going to be ending with today. So that's what's in store. You've seen them before and after, and we're going to take you through the whole process. So the decals are really hard to find for this motorcycle. I ended up having to pay around $300 to get some custom made. So I was trying to save them in the beginning, but here a little bit later in the video I just realized that it wasn't possible, and so I'm going to have to sand them down and take them off. So that's what I was doing there, is I was sanding it so that I could apply some paint remover to it, but the paint remover didn't touch that old paint. That old paint's way too hard. Since the paint stripper didn't work, we went on to plan 2, which was using a drill and wire brush, both from Harbor Freight, to strip that paint off. So some people don't take stuff down to bare metal, which feels like a body panel or something like that. You know, I don't mind, but the tank is the centerpiece of the motorcycle. You know, it's the focal point, it's the first thing everyone sees. So that's why I decided, you know, I want to do this completely, if that makes sense, take it back down to bare metal. So that's the reason. You know, if you get if you sand the bottom layer of paint properly, to use it as a primer, but I just wanted to start fresh on this one because the tank is the focal piece. So this is me just completely getting everything off the tank. Sanding with 500 grit sandpaper just to get a proper surface for the primer to stick to. So my chicken really wanted to eat the sandpaper for some reason. So you know, that's a big part. Got to keep the chickens away from the sandpaper. It's not good for them. So here we're using isopropyl alcohol to get everything, all the remnants off from that wet sanding process. The isopropyl alcohol does a good job. It dissolves, doesn't leave any residue, just like acetone in this scenario, but it'll get all the fingerprints off, everything like that, which is what you want. You don't want any oil at all on the surface of the tank. So this getting all the oil, all the dirt. Just gonna have us a nice good surface for the primer to stick to. using a Rust-Oleum automotive primer. I've used this primer multiple times, and I really have good things to say about it. It's a sandable primer. It leaves a good surface for the paint to adhere to. It's easy to sand, but I think this is a very good primer, a good choice to use. So right here I'm initially doing one light coat. You want to do one light coat to start off with, so that way you know the next layer of primer just sticks to the tank, if that makes sense. You don't want any runs, so I never do heavy coats. I always do light and medium coats. I'm also a fan of, you know, a little bit thicker paint, like laying on a few more coats, so that way, you know, if you do mess up, you have the ability to sand out some blemishes. So that's after the primer's dried, and here's the second layer of primer going on. You see this one's more uniform, it's a little more thick than that first layer. The first layer was just to get good adhesion to the metal. So, which normally with primer, you know, I'm doing 3 to 5 coats. Like I said, this is a sandable primer. I can sand out any defects, and it gives you a little wiggle room. So, you know, like I said, 3 to 5 coats, just to ensure you have full coverage. Again, I like mine a little bit thicker, just so that I have more room to work with sanding it down. Also, follow the instructions on the back of your can for layer recoat times and everything like that. They're the people who manufacture this product, so they'll know it best. So whatever primer you decide to go with, just go with the instructions on the can. So I'm going to wet sand the entire primed surface with 500 grit sandpaper again. This will just give the paint a surface to adhere to. If it's too smooth, you know the paint won't bond well with it. So these little scuffs from 500 grit sandpaper just give the paint enough to bond to the primer. This is Rust-Oleum Gloss Protective Enamel in Cherry Red. I thought Cherry Red was going to be the best color for this motorcycle and build, but I've got a lot of good things to say about the Rust-Oleum products. Only Rust-Oleum product I didn't use on this build was the clear coat. I used 2K clear coat, which is a 2-part clear coat with a catalyst that comes in a spray can too. This whole build I wanted to use rattle cans, you know, just to show that you can do a good restoration without highly professional equipment. You know, you don't have to have a spray gun and a big air compressor. Like, the focus on this build was if you have good paint prep, you can make a professional looking product at the end. So, but again, right here, dusting the first coat on pretty much, get a first light coat, follow in the back of the can for recoat times. You know, like I said earlier, they made this product, they know it best, so just follow the instructions on the back of the can for recoat times. And I'm not doing any heavy coats, I'm just doing, you know, 2 to 5 light to medium coats, just to get enough paint that I can work with if I do ever need to, you know, sand it down with 3000 grit. So, just a applying the light coats right now, getting that first coat on. Again, one thing I can't stress enough is that when using rattle cans, paint prep is the biggest determining factor of how good it's going to look. You know, if you take your time, paint well, you prep everything correctly, then you can make it look really good. But without the paint prep, if you don't spend time in those areas, it can look pretty poor. So initially, I stripped it back down to the bare metal, and since I used a wire brush, I sanded the entire outside of the tank with 500 grit wet sandpaper, so that way I had a nice even surface for the primer to lay onto. Then once the primer dried and cured, I sanded that with 500 grit wet sandpaper, so the red paint would adhere to it properly. This red paint, normally with a clear coat, you apply the clear coat within an hour of the last coat of paint that you laid, but I can't do that because of the decals I have to put on this tank. So on the back of this tank it said apply the clear coat within 1 hour or after a week, just to give the time for the paint to fully cure. So that's what I did here. After I laid all the red paint, I let it dry for over a week, and then I put the decals on, then I clear coated over it, and then I gave it another 2 weeks, and then I ceramic coated it. So that's the steps from start to finish. So one thing to remember when using a rattle can, don't ever start a paint stroke on the tank, because when you initially press down the release on the rattle can, it gets an initial burst, that's more pressurized than the rest. So whenever you start painting, you want to press it to the side of the tank and then carry that over, and then release it after you've already done the strokes. close-up right now, it kind of looks a little orange peely, but whenever it dries, you really can't notice it all. Especially after the clear coat. The clear coat will sit in those grooves per se and flatten them back out, and you really can't notice. So here, I'm prepping for the vinyl stickers that I had to get custom made. I cleaned the surface with isopropyl alcohol. You know, I'm not going to use acetone because this is just painted, and acetone would remove the paint, so I used some watered down isopropyl alcohol just to get all the fingerprints and everything off. I sprayed the surface with soapy water right here, just like you would apply a vinyl car wrap, you know, and the soapy water allows you to move the vinyl if you mess up at all. So since these decals were, like I was saying, $300 for one set, I didn't want to buy another one. So again, soapy water, lay it down, that'll help you get the air bubbles and everything else out. And I'm just checking my phone on looking at pictures of the tank just to make sure I have everything lined up and, you know, not messing up the location of the stickers up. I have done motorcycle tanks where instead of stickers I use different layers of paint to create the same effect, but I think decals are the way to go because you can always just clear coat over a decal, and in my opinion it looks a little bit cleaner than having 4 to 6 layers of paint with all the different colors. Like I said, I've done it before and I thought it turned out good, but if I was going to do it again I would just try to do decals and clear coat over the decals like I'm doing here. I just think it gives a nice cleaner appearance in the end. So here, I'm just cleaning the surface, getting ready to put the clear coat on. This time I'm just using glass cleaner to get the wool off. Glass cleaner, isopropyl alcohol, that all works the same way. So you're just trying to get any residue that was left on the tank off, so that way you have a good surface for the paint to stick to. And that's what I'm doing here, getting ready to lay some clear coat. So this is a two-part clear coat that has a catalyst in it or a hardener, so that way it's chemical resistant. This is one of the only ones that comes in a spray can that is a two-part clear coat, and you mix it right there by putting the button in the cap in the bottom, and that releases the catalyst on the inside. So it's basically like epoxy, how you have to mix two different together to create one really hard. This is just that in spray form. You know, the other clear coats you're gonna get aren't gonna have the level of chemical resistant that this one does. So that was my first big mistake, the very first motorcycle tank. I used just regular enamel clear coat from the auto parts store. And because, you know, it wasn't a two-part clear coat, solvents such as gasoline completely destroyed it. So I got the tank looking beautiful, the clear coat had cured, everything like that, and then whenever I went to fill up my motorcycle tank, a little bit of gas dribbled on it and just took it down to the bare metal. So, just so you don't make a mistake like I did, the two-part clear coat with the catalyst is the way to go for these motorcycle tanks, because I even used acrylic, I used enamel. If it's not a two-part clear coat, then it's just not going to have the chemical resistance like this does. And this is also a very glossy, very good looking clear coat too, so adds a lot of depth to the paint itself, and it has a really nice finish, so I'd recommend this time and time again. So again, here's a few more layers of clear coat going on. Like I said, I'm a big component of, 2 to 5 light to medium coats, just so that if you do mess up, you have enough room to sand it down with like 3,000 or 5,000 grit and work with. So this is the final step. I waited 2 weeks, actually a little bit longer than 2 weeks, but just enough to let the paint fully cure. Here I'm rubbing the outside with isopropyl alcohol, and then I'm doing a G-Technique ceramic coating. So since this wasn't driven anywhere, I don't have to do any paint prep, any polishing, since this directly came painted. So one of my good friends actually owns a detail shop, and he's G-Technique certified and everything like that, so if this ceramic coating that he uses for Lamborghinis is good enough for Lamborghinis, then it's good enough for my motorcycle. So, and I haven't had any problems with the ceramic coating at all. It's been awesome. So, but it just adds a layer of paint protection to it. So again, this is the tank before. Looking at it now, it's in really rough shape compared to the new tank. And this is it after. So, it turned out really great. And like I said, doing it with the rattle cans or spray paint, the biggest part is paint prep. So this is with the ceramic coat, team fully dried and everything like that. So yeah, you can do a good job with the rattle cans. Well, that's all I've got for today. So thanks for watching and stay tuned for the rest of the build.